So no problem.
All right, cool. Back on with Brett Banfe, he's out in Dallas, Texas. Good to see you, Brett. How you doing,
Yeah,
buddy?
thanks for having me on, Gavin. Great to see you as well.
So I got your call, and it sounds like there's a lot of big things happening right now out in Texas at the event that you're in with TeraNode and all things community related. So what's the latest and greatest, man? What's going on?
Yeah, so I'm out here in Dallas, Texas. We're at Mining Disrupt. We're just coming here with the association, BSV Association, and chatting with people, chatting with them about, the revenue potential that TerraNode represents, why miners are incentivized to mine the economic chain with unbounded blocks. That's BSV. There's a lot of people that still really don't know that much about BSV. You get a few, eyebrows raised as we're walking in and chatting people, letting them know who we're here with. But, the really fun part is being able to be at an event like this, and, we don't have to talk about TerraNode as a hypothetical or something that's coming, et cetera. But, this is available in the public right now, and miners can take a look at it, can, spin it up for themselves. And it gives people choice. And what you really realize when you're talking with companies in this space, because again, these types of conferences that we're at, Mining Disrupt, there's another one coming up in April of 2026 that we'll be looking to attend as well. These are, mostly businesses that are coming to these events, and they're incentivized by profit motive. So what we represent is a choice for those businesses about how and where that profit comes from. And just like anything, we think that there's a larger economic incentive for mining on BSV.
Yeah. So when you're talking to these guys at the conference, I mean, what is in it for them on a quick they're just looking to make money and I mean, clearly that's their whole motive. So how would they make more money with this? Is it possible? I mean,
Yeah.
what's your
Yeah,
pitch?
absolutely. And a lot of the people that we're talking to, they already have built-in solutions for converting what they mine into alternate currencies. I think we spoke with a group that was describing a product that they have called Shield Pay, I believe, that was connected to I can't recall exactly, but what the name of the company is. I'll send it to you later so we can put it in the comments. But basically what these miners are doing is they're oftentimes electing to have a portion of their proceeds be deposited directly as USDC into their bank. Because maybe they're using that for overhead, and maybe they're only, even if they're choosing to keep some assets in, on chain, it's not even always a uniform chain that they're choosing. They're a lot of times choosing a percentage of that to go to ETH, a percentage to go to Doge, a percentage to go to BTC, etc. So the reason why I'm bringing that up is because you're already seeing infrastructure being developed where basically the rewards and the incentives are coming in a variety of different outputs on different chains for different reasons. And so it just further levels the playing field for, a chain like BSV where potentially if we're able to scale the chain with higher throughput, data throughput, and create larger economic incentives, think of it like the Coke can analogy, where, yeah, you make a fraction of a penny per can of soda that Coke sells, but of course they're selling hundreds of millions of those every day. And that is the big block vision for Bitcoin. Yes, we are. Earning micro fractions and micro transactions on all of these various different data that we're processing, but we're scaling that to such enormous lengths that it's going to outcompete the rest of the market. And even if those miners want to choose to receive, some of their revenue, they can choose to receive it as BTC. There's no reason why they can't with the advancements in technology now. So it's really about where the bacon, meets the griddle, so to speak. And that's the economic incentives that miners have to actually mine on the most profitable chain. And I'm concerned for BTC. I'm concerned for a couple reasons, but I can get into some of the other reasons after this point. But I'm concerned because as BSV continues to scale, as it continues to Pac-Man the market, so to speak, and absorb all of the, whether it's AI, data communications, the stuff that Coinbase is launching with their 402x data protocols, et cetera. As we're seeing that nothing beats the original vision that Satoshi released for us, then we're just seeing that more and more of that economic incentive sitting on the table for these miners to look at and realize that they actually have a more incentive to mine on a better protocol like BSV.
So it sounds like you're worried, you really are rather worried about BTC, huh? You're empathetic towards them. Why is
I'm
that?
worried because at the end of the day, the only thing that they have to hang their hat on is that, the number go up strategy, the number go up philosophy, right? We did speak, for the most part, the people that we talked to at the event today, they were really open to the TeraNode. We saw tons of people whose mouths dropped to the floor when they heard that this is a public release of a 1 million transaction per second node implementation. Because what we're seeing, Gavin, is like the I believe the chairman of the Swift network was in a panel just last week, I believe, where he was talking about over $100 trillion worth of assets are going to be tokenized and moving to these blockchain powered financial networks. And he marked this as happening by 2030. He's not talking about by 2050 or by 2070 or by 2100. He's talking about in the next 5 years, we're going to see $100 trillion worth of assets moving across blockchain powered networks. And what you see is when you're talking about that volume of throughput for the world's global financial data, you need the absolute most scalable, most secure, highest flexibility. You need to be able to do, smart contracts and DeFi and multi-signature, and you need to be able to have immutable records, public data that's not encrypted on chain, et cetera. And so more and more you're seeing the appetite from the market for the product that BSV has launched, both with the network itself, with TeraNode as the implementation for that network, and for the overlay layers where the application layers connect into the TeraNode network, and then the users themselves become the people that are connecting to the applications that are all powered by this new blockchain powered economy.
So
We're
wait a
seeing
second.
this. Yeah.
This is okay. You said unpack some of this here. So you're saying that one of these executives, and that was that said that in 5 years, not 50 years, but in 5 years. I know that I heard something about Larry Fink saying something along these lines too. But who is this, and what are they saying about 5 years and it's going on chain? What exactly is the prediction, and
Yeah, so
what is
it
their
was the head of the Swift network,
oh, the
and he
Swift network?
Swift network between the interbank network. And so like you're not talking about degens here. You're talking about the most boomer of the most boomers here with regards to, this is the infrastructure for interbank settlement network. And he sees the writing on the wall that all of this is going to move on to a blockchain powered network. It's not a matter of if, it's really a matter of when. And and he earmarked it as 2030. So he sees it as being right down the pipeline that
So was
we're
this
on.
one of the keynotes?
It was, sorry, this the head of the Swift network that declared this, he didn't declare it at this event. This
I
event's
see.
very focused on just the mining industry, but he said it in just, like a week or so ago. And
Recently.
we can maybe put a link in the comments to his discussion about that, because it blew my mind that we really have the legacy financial system sees the writing on the wall. They know that blockchain is going to power the future of especially financial data, but of course we see in BSV all data.
Right. So BTC is that's probably not going to be able to make all those transactions. I mean,
Exactly.
it's just not.
BTC is dead in the water already. I'll tell you another thing that really surprised me about BTC. We saw a panel discussion here with, members of Ocean, like Luke Dasher, and, a few people from Jack Dorsey's company
Oh,
called Ocean.
yeah.
And
They're saying that you can take payments now on Square with Bitcoin. It's like a Was that what they're promoting? I saw a couple pictures of that.
They were
But with
having a discussion
BTC.
about the core versus the NOTS node implementation software. And when the head of the person delivering the panel, the moderator asked for the audience to raise their hand if they're running core software on their node, no one raised their hand. Literally one person in the entire room raised his hand that he's following the core implementation. And when he asked who's running NOTS, it was probably about half the people that were sitting in the audience were running knots. So, and what they said on the stage is they said that there's going to be a hard fork coming up in between the core side and the knot side,
Okay, so
and
this is big. So hold on. So
this is
you're
big.
basically saying that there was a survey from this would be a survey from qualified individuals who are actual business owners who are doing this right now and mining blocks. And so they're in the room and they're saying, I'm mining the Knots network. Raise my hand. And everybody, and only what maybe Greg Maxwell was there and he said he wants to mine the BTC core and that was about it or somebody like that. It was one.
Absolutely. And they, not more than that, they basically all said, we know that a hard fork is coming within 3 months.
Oh,
They
hard fork. So
agreed
what is
on
that?
BTC.
What do you think that? What does that mean? So if they're saying they're going to do a hard fork, does that what is it? What does that mean exactly? I mean, what's going to happen? And how's that?
So there's going to be two different versions of BTC. You're going to
Mhm.
have your core version of BTC. You're going to have your NOTS version of BTC. They're going to be validating transactions differently. Their networks aren't going to be communicating with each other, et cetera. And, all this is going to do is further destabilize this idea of when the only utility you have is just that the price continues to appreciate and you have this sort of this foolish notion that it can do that forever, then all of a sudden, when you see the infighting that happens between these different teams, the Luke Dash Jr.'s, Ocean
You know,
team and the
I
and
want
the
to take
core
some
team.
credit. I want to take some credit for this, please. Give me some credit. But I was my buddy from S Script. He and I were doing conferences at BTC about a year ago, well, right around then, and he was starting to push this whole thing with the OpCat, and it was never heard of, and that's where it started. He's like, I'm gonna, this is Xiaowei Lu. He started pushing it, and I started going there. I had some shows, I recorded and put it on this channel, so you can go back and see them. And now it's started to create this tidal wave.
Yeah, and all they were talking about the entire time was, how and where to put data on chain, et cetera. So but they're already dead in the water. They can't compete with a protocol with an unbounded implementation of Bitcoin like BSV. And so what they're seeing is that if they don't go along with the times, that they're going to just get completely left behind. And when the whole thing is just based on this premise of, well, it's a scarce number, and don't worry, number go up forever. What you're realizing is that, now you're seeing the potential for a real split on their chain, and it's just going to create confusion in the market again, like they have already participated with. And meanwhile, they're both trying and failing miserably to compete and to provide what Bitcoin has already been able to do since day one, which is scale as global cash for the world, and to be the combination, as Zemin Gal put it in his book, of bit, which is data, and coin, which is money.
Yeah, and this is I think this goes along well, Brett, with some of the biggest marketing pushes I'm seeing by influencers and by paid shills just saying buy BTC. Jack Mallers is one, and others are just out there just screaming into the mic, buy BTC. This is it. We're going to the moon. I mean, like these are the desperate calls of please buy what I have. I'm going out. I'm leaving this boat, or I'm paid to say this extensively, I mean, these are like desperate pleas. I mean, from what I'm hearing. Have you
Yeah.
noticed that? Yeah.
Absolutely. And the people that we're talking to, they don't care. They don't care about knots versus core. They don't care about BSV versus BTC, et cetera. All they care about is their bottom line. And what else I was amazed by was, realizing the opportunity that this represents for BSV is to realize how many of these miners are actually either going public and in the process of actually starting that process of an IPO, or they're already public. And so what that indicates to me is that if they're a public mining company, imagine they're traded on the New York Stock Exchange or in the NASDAQ, in other cases, they have an obligation to their shareholders. They're not sitting here being tribalistic about whether or not, decentralized Raspberry Pis is better than, high data throughput like Satoshi originally envisioned. What they have an incentive to is an obligation to their shareholders is to get the most revenue possible for their mining operation. So what that means is that, if you can make the case, and again, they're a publicly traded company, that means that, information that comes to light, their shareholders have a right to know and potentially be able to vote on. Now, all of a sudden, you have BSV with the launch of TeraNode emerging and offering a much higher revenue model for miners. And what you can do is see public pressure from the shareholders of these publicly traded mining companies coming down and forcing these mining companies to mine the most profitable chain. And a lot of times what we're seeing is that they're not tribalistic. They don't care which chain gets mined. All they care about is the revenue model, and that is what BSV represents, is head and shoulders above the competition.
So what makes you believe that, or makes you believe and so confident that they're going to be able to earn more revenue with mining on BSV blockchain versus BTC Core or this knots, that they have?
Yeah. So, it's the difference between really low latency, low volume throughput where it's high fees like 10 cents, 12 cents, all the way up to $50 or $100 during high network volume, what we've seen on BTC versus the ability to scale unboundedly. And what we're seeing with the rise of an influx of data communications with AI and machine to machine exchanges of information, we're seeing that the market, we're just at the very, very dawn of a machine to machine IoT data revolution where you're not going to be able to pay subscription models or things like this because the data is going to be sourced from too many different disparate locations. So it's the model of, like we can earn less per can of cola, that, the Coca-Cola analogy that I used before, that BSV represents right now. Again, we're early. We're all very early, but the infrastructure and the architecture, especially with the launch of TeraNode, is pointing to just a much more lucrative fee market. And we're talking about today's day and age when the BTC chain is still mining three and a quarter or three and an eighth BTC per coin. But when we hit the next halving, it's going to be down to, just over 1.5 BTC. And then after that, it's going to be down to under a single coin per block discovered. Meanwhile, you have this lower profit incentive for mining a useless chain, where you have this increasing profit incentive to mine this scalable unbounded chain that is broken down in a really genius way with the overlay network and the Mandala network and things like that. And so, what you see is that increasingly the cost return for mining on BSV is going to outpace the competition, especially as the halvings come down. And then you're going to see that no one is mining this old artifact chain BTC. People are going to collect it like a gag, like like, oh look, I have a BTC. It's
Yeah.
worth nothing now, but it's like
Yeah,
the
it'll
same
be
way
cool,
that
but
I have an
they
old
can
Coke
do the
can from
actual
the
Greg Coin
1920s.
meme on there
Yeah,
too. I would like to get one when they actually put his face on the Greg Coin and call it what it is. It would be cool to get one.
exactly,
It won't be worth anything,
exactly.
but it'll be a sentimental value. So
Exactly. Meanwhile, the global economy is going to shift to something that's much more scalable, much more elastic. One of the things that we were having great conversations with about when at this event, Mining Disrupt in Dallas, Texas, is about the way in which the TeraNode team took the concept of a node And they, instead of having a monolithic entity that performs all kinds of functions like, hashing, it does, the UTXO store, it does the script validation, it does the lookups, right? It does the double hashing, the checking, the validating, etc. Instead of that all being operated under a centralized monolithic entity, the whole purpose of a distributed decentralized model is that you can break that out into microservices. So now you have the hashing agent is actually only responsible for the hashing, and that's it. And then they hand over the validated block, they hand that over to a specialist in the UTXO lookup store, right? And they're the ones who are checking and validating. Then you're broadcasting it through a separate microservice network. You're doing script validations through a separate microservice network. And this is the vision of, Adam Smith's invisible hand, right? You have the baker, the candlestick maker, etc., right? These are the specialization of the various different services that all contribute to a broader decentralized distributed vision. And it's the ability to break these components out into their different segments that actually allows for, the protocol to scale, because now you're not having the bottleneck of the inefficiency of these various different monolithic entities all managed by a single entity, but instead you're breaking them down into the services that the specialists prioritize and excel at. And then if you also open it up to a market. So maybe if someone is providing better hashing service, like a pool, is providing better hashing service, why use your own machines if you can get the service for cheaper from a hosted platform. So you're really seeing the full scope of everything that Satoshi designed with his original vision all coming together through the deployment of BSV.
Nice, nice. Now, let me just comment here, and I'll get your spin on it too. But I saw that there was some Rui De Silva had posted a thread about some of the costs going up for the miners, and I read through that, and I think it's great to have more information out there for everybody. But I just want to, I read through it, and I just want to give people awareness. Notice that we're in a capitalistic market. If people want to raise their prices, they're going to raise their prices. It doesn't mean it's going to be a fixed price. Everybody must do this. They must do that. There's no iron hand that sets that. If somebody wants to charge more, they're going to charge more. The next guy will charge less, right?
Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah.
isn't that how it's going to work?
Well, it's a delicate layer, like if you've ever done any baking or something, like, baking, you have to be precise, right? It's exactly as much salt, exactly as much yeast, exactly as much baking soda, right? If you miss on some of those components, it can throw the entire structure out of whack. And I think what we're seeing with Hui's post on X, and he's been on your show, and is a great advocate for Satoshi's vision. So I loved hearing his input, his feedback on stuff like this. But where exactly that threshold lies, you're not gonna get it on the first try. There's gonna be times when you ballpark it and you're too low. There's gonna be times when you ballpark it and you're too high. But the more that you can make it a competitive market, the more that the people themselves benefit from. And that's what we're seeing with, like our competitors. They don't want this to be a competitive market. What they really, really want, and you can tell, and you're seeing people sick of this at an event like Mining Disrupt. They want the network to be so throttled and for people to, and a Bitcoin transaction happens once in a blue moon, maybe like once a month. Someone moves a Bitcoin or something, but really everything happens at all these, abstract ethereal layers using things like eCash or Lightning Network, et cetera, right? They envision this world that, like, the artifice of using the chain is like something that, like that, oh, my grandpa used to use the chain, but, no one does that anymore. We're just using these like third or fourth or fifth layers, et cetera. Whereas but what that encourages, if you actually think of that model and what that encourages the largest holders of Bitcoin to consolidate those holdings into these centralized operators, so that you're losing the self-custodial nature of the asset, and you're converting it into, an account that you keep on Coinbase, or an account that you keep on Kraken or something like that, right? And then once it's a derivative that's being managed by Kraken, then we can trade it back and forth with each other. And if we were all only on the Kraken, payment layer, then wouldn't the world just be so great? But yeah, we could all be using PayPal too, right? But it's there's something different between using these account-based models to transfer funds back and forth with each other, and to use the instant verification and the self-custodial nature that Satoshi originally gave us. So what you really see is that these people, when they are talking about wanting to throttle the network throughput using like low block sizes and small blocks, etc., they really just want to take the ownership. They claim that they're self-sovereign and that they want financial freedom for all, but they don't. They just want a different middleman than the one that has existed before. Whereas a truly scalable version of Bitcoin implemented as BSV actually gives people the ability to keep their funds on chain, to move them freely with each other, and they don't need a node layer to be in between them.
Yeah, I mean, on a philosophical level, and it's much deeper than just some block size or some sort of a scaling war. I mean, this is about freedom. It's about control versus freedom, slavery versus freedom. Because I mean, the system that we're in right now, it it's just a slave system, and that's how we are. We're born into it, and we really can't have no way out of it until we get to this potential freedom where we eventually take and start transacting peer to peer. I mean,
Yeah,
that's really at a fundamental basis, that's what it's all about, because it takes away their power to control money and to control us. That's what they don't want.
absolutely. And, but what they're kind of the wolf in sheep's clothing when they're saying that they're against all of those things, when actually they really want to install all those things. But instead of having it be the Federal Reserve, who's the one that's keeping and managing all of those, all of that backroom data and stuff like that, they just want it to be, their partner network, which is the centralized exchanges that they use to basically screw everyone over which is the real Bitcoin to begin with when it came to the ticker symbols and things like that. And really, what you're seeing is that they're just afraid of competitive markets, right? They want to keep it into digital gold so that it doesn't get used, so that basically, don't look over here, instead, pay attention over there,
I mean,
and it's
but Brett, I think that
it's a laughing stock.
it is, but I think the one thing that I'm getting out of this is you're saying that this guy, and I know one of the guys from BlackRock, Larry Fink, said the same thing, but you're saying 5 years they're saying now it's going to be all going on chain. Well, that means that they must see how, because I mean they know that that's not going to be BTC. So I mean that's for sure. They're not dumb. It can't be BTC. So they have to see a solution. They have to have engineers that have shown them, look, there's a solution here. This can scale. We can do this. It's just going to take time to bring the adoption. I mean, so this is exciting, man. It's really exciting.
Yeah, absolutely. And you're seeing the bare bones of that engineered architecture and system in, the tools that Project Babage is building with the BRC 100, with the overlay network primitives that they've developed. You're seeing it with the just the concept of the UTXO set itself is, it can't be an account-based system. It can't be a proof of stake system, right? It needs to be a proof of work system that has unbounded scaling. And as more and more data throughput comes to the network, you just get additional resources to develop. And it's so funny because I'm here with Connor Murray. I haven't gotten a chance to talk too much about him, but first of all, he's the one that got me into this stuff. If you aren't a fan yet of Connor Murray, go on YouTube after this show and look up some of his stuff. He's great. And he's saying, that these conversations that they're having between core and knots and data on chain and all of this stuff, these are the conversations we were having 6 or 7 years ago. Nothing has changed in the world of BTC. They're still bickering. They're still, food fighting with each other, and at the end of the day, it's about real economic utility and scale, and so much more. Maybe 6, 7 years ago, and we're still early, but it was still foreign to people. Some of this concept of, oh, what is tokenization of a real world asset? What does that even mean? I don't understand that. Whereas now we're seeing the head of the SWIFT network saying this is coming, get ready. So we're and this is happening right as TeraNode is launching. So So we're really primed at a pivotal point in the history of blockchain where we're not just saying, okay, hypothetically unbounded scaling can replace the dwindling subsidy. We're saying no, it's live today and we tested it. And we're also inviting some of these miners. We're saying, hey, we'd love some feedback from you. Spin this up and tell us, what do you think about it? And at the end of the day, these are profit driven entities. As one of the guys mentioned to me, a lot of times they have boards of directors who he called white haired, executives, right? So these are older people that you can't necessarily, lose with technical jargon about, knots versus core or this versus that. All they see at the end of the day is revenue opportunity. And if BSV represents that, that's going to be the way that we win.
Yeah, be sure to subscribe to this channel because if you haven't already, guys, because I've got shows with Connor Murray that are going to come out that I filmed out there in London blockchain, actually with the TeraNode group. It was a Siggy. It's a live panel that I did. These guys were not on stage. It was a private kind of off the cuff panel that I did. And that's coming out really soon. It's going to be really good with him. And, I'll tell you, like I've been wanting to put out like stuff about fitness and health content. And I have all these other ideas, but I'm thinking the excitement about what's happening on poor little woe is me BSV is like just so freaking insane. We are at this moment that the sea change moment video that I'm gonna have with Brennan is coming out. I'm probably gonna have it out today, maybe tomorrow. I'm just waiting on the thumbnail, and as soon as that comes out, like that is like it represents a major turning point because he does a full analysis on what's happening right now in how the steel pipes are all built like with this boat, the Cuddy Sark, and he represents this as like TeraNode now rolling out in public to the market and the opportunity that it brings. And all this is just coming along, lining up with what you're saying, Brett. So I know you've got limited time, but I want to hear what else you have to say about the event or any last words or closing thoughts. Please, floor is yours.
Yeah, sure. So yeah, we're heading out. We got invited to a happy hour just across the street from the hotel. I took some time just to come in, check in with you all so you can kind of hear the boots on the ground take. Right away, I was blown away by the warm reception that we got. And I've been to, this is primarily a BTC event because it is a mining driven event. So you're sometimes meeting with different people that are introducing new potential chips, new potential hardware configurations. We even had one guy down there who is running a booth, and the whole thing that they're selling at the booth is just better air filter equipment. Like you literally think it looks like a Home Depot aisle or something like that. He's just selling air filters. So not every single booth are we talking to that, necessarily has a fingerprint that touches what we're developing and designing with scalable Bitcoin, right? But we're finding the people that do that actually are driven by, the profit incentives of these, various different mining pools, et cetera. They're open to the idea. They love seeing us at the event, because, when we go to some of these other events that are strictly primarily, BTC hodl events, you get a much more abrasive crowd. Whereas this crowd, insofar as they're all miners, they're actually open and they want to learn about new ways that they can maximize their revenue potential, new ways that they can break down the microservices components that maybe they're not as good at to other partners that can compete and provide better services. So that was one of the first things that I found was just the warmth receptivity that we got, the people that really see that we're as Kurt Wooker Jr. talks about all the time, 99.9% have the same goals and views in common. It's really it's so refreshing to come to events like this and really see the humanity of the people that if because what I was describing to Connor is we're not sitting here trying to develop a solution like TeraNode just to pat ourselves on the back and say, oh, what good engineers are we that we figured out how to extend Satoshi's vision to do unbounded scaling, et cetera. It's not because we want to congratulate ourselves. The reason why we're doing that is because we're sitting on a boat called the Titanic that is heading straight for an iceberg called the Dwindling Subsidy, right? And we're saying, hey guys, like we're building you life rafts. Like, you need to start to think about ways to supplement the Coinbase rewards that you're getting with actual user fees. That requires user scaling. That requires Section 8 of the white white paper, SPV. It requires all these things that Satoshi actually saw. That's why he built the Merkle tree structure for the data on chain. It's why he built, the high, that's why it's why he talked about the Usenet users not all needing to be NNTP server runners, etc. I mean, Satoshi envisioned all of this. And the other thing I'll mention is the privacy element of it. That scalability, people forget that yes, it has to do with the economic incentives of mining and stuff, but there's so many privacy advocates out here, and you realize that actually you get much greater privacy when you can take a single $100 payment, and break that down into 100,000 different UTXOs, that basically with identity firewall, you don't know which actually belong to me. So more and more you see that actually the narrative that we're selling and what we're telling them, this is something that's warmly being received by the community. And I think it to me, it's a disaster if you're on the BTC side. I think we're going to eat their lunch. There is no way that BTC is coming back. It's going to be on a downward trend because it has no utility. And what we're going to see is slowly the BSV strategy is going to continue to expand until basically the bottom is going to fall out of the wet paper bag on BTC.
Yeah, I like your, that was a really good analogy. When the user fee, I'm sorry, when the Coinbase reward, when the user fees replace the Coinbase reward, I think was one of the nuggets that I got there. That's really what's happening. They want to really start focusing on that. So, okay, one of the other things is you mentioned the in-person event and how important it was. I had a chat with the lady this last week, and she didn't understand the importance of actually being in person. Like, oh, I'm on the internet, that's okay. It's not the same. It's nothing like it. And we have the event coming up in January that you're putting together and hosting, right? So can you just plug that and what
Sure.
people can look forward to?
Yeah, I'm really excited to announce that the next Project Babage Hackathon will be in Boulder, Colorado. We're already in conversations for renting the venue. This is, of course, where I live, so I've been there for 15 years, and really excited to partner with the business community. Have a lot of ideas in store for ways that we can not just be using these tools that BSV makes available to us and leveraging the value of this network as a data attestation tool and a timestamping server, but really, catering these towards a business use case. Like, for example, Ball Aerospace in Boulder, Colorado is is in the aerospace industry. So, potentially trying to, build some of these tooling that produces a product that touches in the aerospace industry. We'd love to see that so that it's not just about, building something in sort of a vacuum, but of isolation, but really how does this benefit a business in our community? And looking forward to that being tuned for January, and that will be the next Babbage Hackathon.
Definitely. We'll expect big things on that one. I'm looking forward to that as well. So early January, likely like second week or so. I know you're just putting the details together, but let's talk more about that when you have more time, and let's brainstorm on making that a huge event. I'm looking forward to it. So can't wait. So any last closing thoughts?
Just want to say thank you very much, and you're always a huge inspiration. And yeah, thanks for having me on today.
You're welcome, Brett. Thank you, everybody. Hit the ones, subscribe, and be sure to check the comments. Brett will leave those other links in the comments that you mentioned about the other videos on that. Leave a comment, and hey man, enjoy the rest of the event there. Say hi to Connor Murray, okay?
All
And
right.
the seat change moment. So I'll see you at the top. All right, later.